Chronicles teaches that God's kingdom comes when God's king in God's house listens to the priests who sing God's song. But now, God's kingdom in Israel was nothing like the heights it had fallen from. For after Babylon, after the war, after exile, after the gore, the kingdom of God needed resurrection. It needed to be restored. So, the chronicler, the compiler of Israel's history, wrote the book of Chronicles to show their king his kingdom's story, to show the ideal of what could be done when God's king, house, and songs make God's kingdom come. Which is why the chronicler starts his story with the downfall of Israel's first king named Saul. God placed his throne in the tent of meeting, where God and his king would meet. This throne was the Ark of the Covenant. It was the place from which God would reign and speak. But when Saul was king, he did not seek God's voice. He did not wait for God's guidance to lead. Saul did not see the need to listen to the words of his priests when considering how to proceed in his fight against Israel's enemies. Instead, he sought to fill the vacant seat. He sought another voice to speak into the vacancy. He left the tent of meeting and listened to the twisted melodies of a medium, a psychic, a witch. Saul wanted to know which path to take and depended on the occult to tell him which way was which. Saul charged into a battle God had not told him to fight, and for ignoring the voice of God, Saul lost his life. This was a warning after exile to the kings of Israel. If they want God's kingdom to come, they must listen to his voice in the temple. But after Saul, the kingdom experienced a resurrection. Though Israel lost her first king, God had prepared a better one. A king who would listen to God's voice and obey the words of the songs God gave them. And his name was King David. David listened to God on how to secure peace from their enemies and how to find rest from their wars. Again and again, David listened to God and was shown how to free his people from the sword. In battle after battle, king after king lost their grip on God's people until they finally had peace. And once there was peace on every side, once his people were finally free, David noticed that God, their true king, still reigned from a tent. David's palace was far greater than the place where God and his king met. So David wanted to build a proper place for God's throne to be, a permanent home for God's seat, a place where God's people, priests, and king could assemble. David wanted to build God a temple. So, as an example of what Israel's kings after exile must do, the chronicler chronicled David's preparational activities to construct this temple and all the organizational components necessary for Israel to allow God's king to be in God's house and listen to the priests who sing God's song. David gathered the materials for the temple's construction. He mustered the priests to carry out the temple's functions, especially the musicians who would sing over the king God's instructions. All of this David then gave to his son Solomon, who listened to God's voice with wisdom. Down to the finest detail, Solomon completed the temple's construction, and God's kingdom did come. When God's king in God's house listened to the priests who sang God's song. As a result of God's king, Israel experienced its greatest resurrection. By listening to God's song, God's kingdom blossomed, but not by the sword or military stratagems. No, Solomon was winning over the world by following God's wisdom. Yet, with the death of Solomon came the death of wisdom. King after king stopped listening to God's voice in a downward succession. His house was no longer filled with the sounds of musicians. Instead, like Saul, they sought to fill what they perceived as a vacant seat. King after king sought another voice to speak into that vacancy. They left the temple as Saul left the tent of meeting and listened to the twisted melodies of false gods and idolatry. As Saul listened to the song of the witch, they depended on other singers to tell them which way was which. And as a result, the reign of Israel diminished. Yet, some of Israel's kings were not as blemished. Kings like Josiah rediscovered God's songs and resolved to revisit the wise ways of Solomon, and the kingdom was replenished. Israel experienced resurrection, for the kings cast out the idols and stopped the songs of witches and magicians. They reinstated the priests, listening once again to their prophetic musicians. But ultimately, these kings did not only follow the wisdom of Solomon. In the end, each of them had their own fall. For their final good king, Josiah, did not listen to God's song and died just like Saul. But there is one king who not only listened to God's song, but is God's very wisdom. He not only represented God as king on earth, but is the true king of God's eternal kingdom. For Jesus is the voice that every priest and every king listened to when they heard God sing. And now we have the same choice, the same opportunity as Israel's chronicled kings. Like Solomon, we can listen to Jesus' wisdom and be part of the resurrection he is bringing to his eternal kingdom. For Jesus is speaking, not in a distant temple only accessible to priests and kings, but within the tent of meeting created within everyone who listens, everyone who believes that Jesus is the King who forever speaks. So may we reign with Jesus. Like David, may we bring about the kingdom of peace. Like Solomon, may we win over the world by going where his wisdom leads. For God's kingdom comes when we, God's people, are made into Jesus' house, where we can listen to our King sing his songs. Hey everyone, David Bowden here, and I just wanted to thank you for watching our introduction to the book of Chronicles. We are Spoken Gospel. We're a nonprofit dedicated to speaking the gospel out of every single part of Scripture, and we do that in a lot of different ways, like this introduction video, but we also have devotionals and podcasts, and we give it all away for free because of generous people just like you who give whatever they can to support our ministry. So if you want to learn more about our free resources or become a part of helping us make more, go to spokengospel.com.